Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or a rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a minute and it helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. My grief tip for today is to do something to celebrate the due date or the birth date of your baby. And I use the word celebrate because I absolutely think that your baby deserves to be celebrated. It doesn't have to be anything big or grand. You can make or buy a cake or cupcakes and sing happy birthday. You can do something special with your partner or loved one in honor of your baby. You can spend the day looking at pictures and just thinking about your baby. It not only helps celebrate the life of your baby, but it also helps you process the grief. Those due dates and birth dates tend to be really hard for a lot of lost parents. So spend it doing something that helps you connect with your baby. And each year may feel different. Some years may be harder than others. You don't have to do the same thing every year either. Just do what feels right for you and your family. So today's business spotlight is from Lizzie Sangray at Intentional Mama. She writes, "Hi everyone listening. My name is Lizzie Sangray. I have my master's in social work and was a practicing therapist until it became a bit too much for our family with 2 young girls in 2020. In 2021, my husband and I decided to try to add another goober to our family. Over the course of the next 2.5 years, we struggled with conceiving and had 4 miscarriages. Over that time, I was depressed, anxious, lonely, and trying everything in the books to get pregnant. The shame was unbearable each month that I felt my body was failing me. Finally, I tried methylfolate under the assumption that I have the MTHFR gene mutation. My body immediately reacted positively to the supplement. I felt so much better. I knew this was it for me, along with many other diet and lifestyle adjustments and supplements. We got pregnant a few months later and just had our miracle rainbow baby at the end of December 2023. During this time, my 2 passions in life collided and exploded into the idea of making affirmation cards for women suffering in similar ways to how I did. I wanted to bring positive meaning to my losses. I missed doing therapy, but knew I didn't want to sacrifice time raising my girls. So the idea was born. I created digital affirmation cards to start, followed by hard copy packs of printed affirmation cards. After many purchases and lots of interest, I began dreaming of other resources that might support women and men during such a critical and sensitive time. I created conversation cards for couples to promote connection and healing with different questions that could be asked in a no-pressure environment. I wrote a short ebook highlighting the top 10 ways that I was able to survive the first 2 weeks after a miscarriage. My shop also included journal prompts for after a miscarriage and/or loss. I got so passionate about my mission that I hopped onto Instagram and wanted to begin building a community while posting affirmations and stories that could inspire and help women and men experience less shame and not feel so alone. My Instagram is Intentional Mama, and my Etsy shop is called Intentional Mama, and that's MAMMA. This business will be 1 year old this summer and will continue to blossom. Each person going through infertility, loss, and trying to conceive month after month is a certified superhero. I hope my little corner of resources can help lessen the weight the tiniest bit. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much for sharing about your business with us. I look forward to checking out everything you have in your shop. So today I am talking with Kasia. She had quite a long journey with infertility and loss. She went through several rounds of IUI and IVF, along with several miscarriages, before being diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis. She had surgery and was preparing to use a surrogate before doing one final transfer, which resulted in her one living rainbow baby. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Kasia. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Kasia, and I live in the city of Chicago. I've been living in the city for 21 years. I was born in Germany, but my family were immigrants from Poland, and so basically my almost entire life has been living in Chicago, in the suburbs, and in the city. and for just a short period of time lived in Phoenix for like a year and a half, my senior year of high school, and then moved back and met my husband and partner here in Chicago right after college. And we've been living in the city. We have a German short-haired pointer dog, a mix with a Great Dane. And so we do everything city where we can be out and about with her. And I have a 26-month-old daughter after 7.5 years of going through our fertility journey and multiple miscarriages and losses. And so we are constantly out and about in the city. I'm also a gardener, so I have lots of plants in my house, as you can see, like constantly around. And I love great food. So we're constantly trying out like different restaurants and trying to remake it at home. It's never as good as it is in the restaurants, but I'm always like trying to play around with foods. And I just love being outdoors as much as possible. If I could, I'd probably walk barefoot around the world. And my husband and I love to travel. So that's our love languages, is being able to travel internationally, locally, but we would rather spend money on travel than probably a new car or updates to our house. That's where we like to really just connect with people around the world. So that's just a little bit about me. I'm an empath and very down to earth, and I'm a hugger. So if you ever see me, I'll probably be hugging instead of shaking. I think it's a little bit more personal, which probably weirds a lot of people out, but I think it's the Midwestern in me who loves to hug and be social with other humans.
Where's been your favorite place to travel?
Ooh, great question. Probably in the US, my favorite city in the US is by far San Francisco. I love everything that it has to offer. I'd probably say my favorite international city is Amsterdam. We love biking. So we bike. We have like a bike membership here in the city of Chicago. And so I'll bike to my dentist's office. I'll bike to my doctor's office. I love being able to bike and be close to the lake. So I'd probably say Amsterdam, because they have great food. The people are so incredibly hospitable. I mean, I've never met kinder people than Amsterdam. I'm like blown away by the amount of languages that are spoken, the types of food that you can find, and just that people are literally singing on their bikes while it's raining outside. Like they're genuinely excited, happy people. So I'd probably have to put Amsterdam at like the top of my list.
I've never had a chance to visit, but you're making me want to go visit.
Gotta go. You can find stuff for every type of thing you might like, from museums to parks to kayaking to taking a little boat on the channel. I think that's what they call them, the channel or the rivers. You gotta go.
So can you talk a little bit about your infertility and loss journey?
Yeah, so my husband and I met and got married in 2013, and then kind of wanted to do like the typical 6 months of, being married and being able to do our things. And then we would try and just have fun. And so we started in January of 2014, and, we're having fun. I, bought all like the sexy lingerie and just traveled and didn't think about it. And we did that for probably about a year and a half. And then by June of 2015, I was like, this just can't be this hard. My mom had 4 children. My husband and his mom, there was no issues that we had known about. So Tim and his sister, and I'm the oldest of 4. I was like, my mom didn't have issues. Like, this shouldn't be this hard. And I am from a Polish immigrant family. And so I was like, everyone has a lot of kids. This is not going to be hard for me. And then because it was taking us a year and a half, my gynecologist said, it'd just be good to just do a workup. And so I checked my AMH at the local fertility clinic that she sent me to. And she did say, it's a little bit lower than I would like for somebody who's 30. And I remember thinking, well, I am having kids, trying kids later. My mom had me when she was 20. So I'm like, it is 10 years older. So I just assumed it was just, I'm having kids a little late. When I say a little later, 10 years later than my mom had kids. But I did go into the clinic and say, I think I have endometriosis. I've always had very painful periods to the point where I'm almost passing out. And the doctor said, oh yeah. She's like, this is not a problem. This doesn't affect infertility. This doesn't, affect fertility. And so we did all the workup. Everything came back to my husband. Great. Everything outside of a lower AMH, but everything came out great with me. And we started with the IUIs, and we kind of did a few IUIs back to back. And so we started in January of 2016 with IUIs. And we did 3 back to back, and none of them took. We didn't get pregnant naturally at all or with IUI. And then, the doctor had said, like, it's probably time to move into IVF. And so we went into IVF. I said, listen, this has been taxing, like, mentally. I didn't know that this would be this hard. At this point, we're now end of 2016. We've at least been trying since January, and this is like 2.5 years, almost 3. And so I said, I'd like to take a little bit of a break. So we've traveled a lot of times in between. Our journey is so long because we decided to do the thing that we love to do the most between the two of us, and travel. I was like, I can't keep going through this unless we travel. So we did do a lot of traveling. And in January of 2017, did my very first retrieval. And we had 3 eggs. We did not PGS test because our doctor said, you're so young, I'm not even concerned about it. I'm not going to push for you to PGS test, which in hindsight, I wish I did. And we transferred, and I miscarried at 3.5 weeks. And I just said, let's get back on the wheel. Let's go to the next one. We did the next one. And in June of 2017, we were graduating my fertility clinic, walking out, saying bye to all our nurses, my amazing doctor, went into the OB at 12 weeks, and the baby stopped moving. And so I had a DNC at just over 12 weeks. And I paused at that one because that was really our first loss. And that one shook our marriage to, that just rocked our marriage to such a core. I really didn't know if my husband would get out of this dark cloud, this storm, this depression. He had never seen a therapist in his life. And I was like mentally trying to gear us up for the next one. And he's like, I just feel like I can't get out of bed. And I remember just thinking, like, oh my God, the whole time he's been cheerleading me. I don't know how to cheerlead myself, to hype myself up for all these shots and all these appointments and test the DNC. And, I was like, oh my God, we were about to start like a baby registry. Like, we were planning a baby moon. How do I psych my husband up and cheerlead him to, like, hey, let's get on the wagon again? Because if I stop long enough, I'll stop to pause and actually think what's happening. And the pausing to think and actually reflect and feel my feelings is going to be unbearable. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back on the, I don't want to say horse, but really, like, get back on the wagon and start this again. And so I said, I love you. I'm always here for you. And I should pause and say, in the midst of our fertility journey, in the fall of 2014, my father died suddenly, unexpectedly, had a heart attack. So I had already, like, I started seeing a therapist during that time. So I was quite familiar with seeing a therapist. He hadn't. He's never had like a loss as major as I had. So this was like my second loss, his very first large loss. And so I was like, you have to see a therapist. Like, I don't know the language to use. I don't know how to help you. I know what works for me and what helps me because I've done therapy, but, like, you need to see someone. And he did. And I'm so grateful that he decided to do it. It wasn't like just me pushing him, but, like, he really decided to do it because it was so helpful to know everyone deals with loss differently. And it's like this wave, as I know you, it like comes and goes. It's like you're not thinking about it. And then all of a sudden you see some stupid commercial and you're like, oh my God. And you're on the ground crying, or like it just gut punches you. You're like, I thought it was good. This was like a year later, or 2 months later, and you're like, I thought I was doing really good. And it's like that one moment that just really shakes you to your core, and you're like, okay, I can't watch that one Disney movie, or I can't watch that one commercial, or I can't walk past that one street where the sign says whatever. And so he went to therapy, and he wasn't really excited for cycle 3, but we went into IVF number 3, and it just didn't take. It was just a failed cycle. And the doctor contributed that to maybe there was scar tissue that was still left over from the DNC. So we decided to take a break and kind of reevaluate, like, our marriage and what we needed. So we traveled some more. And then in 2018, we decided to go in. We had no more embryos left. And so we had to go into another retrieval. So in January of 2018, we decided to go back in and did a retrieval. I had 2 embryos. And I said to my doctor, I'm not transferring anything that's not PGS tested, because there was potentially, they said, when you're that far along at 12 weeks, we can't tell and separate tissue from the mother or the child. So it came back normal, but they're like, we don't know how much of that was your tissue, how much of it was babies. It was really hard to tell. So I just said, let's just do PGS to like eliminate that one having to think about it. And 2 PGS tests that came back, which was amazing. Both were sent off, both came back healthy. We transferred the very first one, and it took, and everything was great, but the anxiety really set in. And I think that's something that a lot of couples and women don't talk about, is when it does take again after such a, you know, we had 2 losses, but that 12-week one was like, I call it like our great loss, because it really, that is the loss. When we think about losses, that is the one that shook us. And so it's hard to get excited. You're really like having panic attacks at every week. Like, is the baby going to be moving? And luckily I had such a fabulous crew at my clinic where they were like, if you want to come in every week, we will check you every week. I was like, please, like, I need to know, because I've already graduated before. Like, I need to know. And so everything looked great at 5 weeks, at 6 weeks, and we weren't supposed to come in and until 8 weeks. And at 7 weeks, I kind of felt exactly how I felt at 11 weeks with our 12-week miscarriage. It was like, I was not feeling nauseous. I was not feeling cramping. I was not feeling bloating. And I just said, can I please come in at 7 weeks? And they're like, of course. And my one nurse, Liz, was just fabulous. And she's like, Kasia, I've got you. Come on in. And I said, please just check. I was like, I don't know. I'm just not feeling anything. I'm not feeling nauseous. I'm not feeling cramping. Like, something's not right. Can you please just validate that I'm just like going crazy? I wanted to know, I wanted to actually think I was crazy. How sad is that? Like, I actually wanted somebody to say, you're crazy. Everything's healthy. And as soon as she said, I'm so sorry, the baby is not moving, the baby has no heartbeat, it was just like validation. It's like, it was validating to know I know my body. I knew exactly to the day of like when something wasn't right. And I was just like, oh, again, like, when is this going to happen for us? And at that point, I said to my doctor, we have one more healthy PGS tested. You are not transferring anything else into me. You need to give me some answers. I don't care if it's another surgery. I don't care if you found, like, I need just more answers. Everything is unknown, unknown. Unknown is the worst part about going through infertility, because you're like, I want some answer to like know, like, is it more vitamins I need to take? Is it a procedure I need to do? Is there something else I need to be doing, or my spouse or partner? And she had said, she's like, I'm checking everything. Everything is looking healthy. We cannot figure out, like, you are miscarrying healthy PGS tested embryos and normal, healthy, as far as they know, untested PGS or untested embryos. I said, what else do you suggest? I'm looking to you for some sort of answers. Like, do you think I need another opinion? And she's like, I think that's always a great idea, which is another reason why I loved the second fertility doctor we had. And so we did. We went and got another opinion at another clinic, another doctor. And she said, I hate to tell you this, I would take you on in a heartbeat as a client. But I'm just telling you, I would do exactly what your current fertility doctor is doing. So like, by the time you saw us, we would do all the workup. It's really just a waste of money and time for you, because I would do exactly what she's doing. Okay, so that made me feel better that our fertility doctor was like, I was in good hands. And my fertility doctor had said, you know what? You have complained about painful periods. There's only 2 doctors in Chicago that I would highly recommend. They are the doctors for endometriosis. Go and see them. They're specialists. Go see what they have to say. So I had like the initial, talk with the doctor and the surgeon. And he said, unfortunately, the only way to completely diagnose them with endometriosis is excision surgery. And I said, I'm ready for it. I've now had 3 miscarriages in a year and a half. I don't want to go through any more miscarriages. I need answers. Like, I'm willing to do, she's even mentioning, like, at this point, a donor egg. I don't want to do donor egg quite yet. I just want more answers to my body. Like, is it me physically not being able to carry, or is it truly the egg? Like, we just can't tell what it is, because I'm miscarrying at different sites, like 3.5 weeks, 12 weeks, 7.5 weeks. Like, they're not able to connect. Like, it's not consistent. So my doctor, the fertility specialist, said, I think you're a great candidate for, you probably have endometriosis. He's like, the great news is I can tell you within 10 to 15 minutes, we put a camera in, we go in through your abdomen, and we will use tools on either side. So it'll be like a stitch on either side of like outside of your belly button. And within 10 to 15 minutes, I can tell you if you have endometriosis. And I said, that's great news. I keep thinking like, I'll go under for a little bit. You go under so many times for your retrieval, your scar tissue cleanup. Like, I was like, 10, 15 minutes, that's a piece of cake. Put me in, doctor. And he said, worst case scenario, if you have so 1 to 2, stage 1 or 2 of endometriosis, it's a little bit harder to see that. So that's why they say excision surgery is really important, because they can go in with the camera and use these tools to see it. And stage 3 or 4 would be like, it literally oozes black blood. They're like chocolate cysts, that's what they call them. So they literally can poke them and it oozes black blood, or it looks like chocolate. And that's actually like toxic. So he's like, we'll be able to see that right away. Great. I'm like, sign me up. Surgery, here we go. And he's like, max, if you have stage 3 or 4, 45 minutes to an hour and a half max. So I go into surgery. I'm scheduled at, I think my schedule was 10 o'clock by the time he saw me. They had other patients. It was like closer to 12. I woke up 7.5 hours later from surgery. I was the first person in the waiting room. My husband was the last person in the waiting room. My doctor had to cancel all of his surgeries after me because he could not get to them that day. And I woke up at 8 o'clock and my husband says, I have great news and I have bad news. And I said, give me the bad news first. He goes, well, you were right. It was stage 4 endometriosis. He said, your left ovary was flat as a pancake, shoved up into your abdomen. That's how high it was up. Your left fallopian tube was completely decrepit. There was nothing coming in or out of that tube. That was removed. And it went all the way up into like literally my butthole. Like it was everywhere. And the doctor, the good news is, the doctor's like, you were right. It was endometriosis. And this is probably what was causing all of the pain and why you weren't getting pregnant. Or even if you were trying to get pregnant naturally, it was just never going to happen because you literally didn't have a left fallopian tube that was working. And so my first response was, thank God I advocated for myself. Thank God I kept asking questions. I was also grateful I spoke English as my second language. I was like, what do women do that can't speak English and can articulate to a doctor, this is not normal? In 13 years, I went and within 9 years, I saw 13 different gynecologists. And I kept asking, this is like prior to even trying to have kids. Listen, I have painful periods. What are your thoughts? This is all of my 20s. They're like, this is normal. We as women, we just deal with pain. That was what I was told. And they were all female doctors. Out of those 9 doctors, only 2 were male. One was my endometriosis surgeon, and another was a doctor who I adored, who said, you probably have endometriosis. When you're ready to have kids, come and see me. And there are things we can do to manage pain and things we can do to talk about how to deal with this. And when I went back and we were ready to have kids and we're married and ready to start having children, he was just retiring. And so all these women were not listening to me. They diminished my pain, invalidated. I truly felt like I was crazy. I'm like, I must be really sensitive to pain. And in reality, my pain tolerance was extremely high. And so much so that when I came out of surgery, the doctor was like, where's your pain? I was like, oh, like at a 6. And they were like, are you sure not at a 10? I was like, no, this is manageable. And they were like, okay, we can give you like pain manager. Like, no, this is at a 6. They're like, that's not normal. Like, we know what this pain is supposed to be. And it's supposed to be like at a 10. And I was like, no, this is okay. And so it was just like, they ask you when you come out, like, what's the pain? Because you can't really speak. You have a tube in your mouth. And so they need to know like you're coherent and that you can feel again. And so for like a few moments, you actually feel. And so they like, it's like up or down, like, do I need to increase the pain management or the pain medication? I don't remember what they were giving me. And it was like laughable. I was like, I said a 6 to what most women should say a 10 to. And it was like all these decades of being diminished and invalidated of pain. And so after the surgery, my neighbor and dear friend, who did not believe me, she was one of those OB-GYNs, said, oh, you had stage 4. You actually had endometriosis. And I said, yeah, I did mention pain. And she felt really guilty. It was like this, oh, shoot, I should probably listen to my. And so I hope that was a learning moment for her. I'm sure it was. And I think for a lot of doctors, I think we need to be talking about like not diminishing women's pain. And I just think of how many women, this is 1 in 10 women worldwide are experiencing excruciating, debilitating pain. This is not thriving in everyday life. And so I think about that, and I just think it's such an amazing lesson for me and for other women. I hope that gives them, like, just get a second or third opinion. And not every doctor is, like, research your doctors, but advocate for yourself. So I think that really helped me in terms of advocating for infertility and advocating for, loss and advocating to find answers for our family. And so I did the surgery. Recovery is supposed to be 1 to 2 weeks. Mine was 4 to 6 weeks because it was just like, my doctor said, can I have a John Hancock and can I use this with my residents? Because it was just like he said, this is case study material. Like, I can't believe you were like managing this. I was like, well, I wasn't really thriving. That's the point. I just thought this was part of life. And so I had the surgery and then went back. We transferred our very last PGS tested embryo, and it just did not take. And at that point, my doctor said, why don't you try naturally? So we tried naturally for about 4 months. Still wasn't working or happening naturally for us. And so I said, I'm open to one more IUI because I knew I had one good fallopian tube. We did that. And at that point, I think I was like already at 5 IUIs, 5 IVF transfers. I was like, okay, something needs to change. Like, I've done the surgery. I've done this hard part. I've had 3 miscarriages. Like, maybe I need to change clinics. And there was in Chicago, the very first ever infertility summit. And I was like, I have to go. I don't know what to do. Like, do we go into adoption? Do we do donor egg? Do we then do, surrogacy? Like, I was like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. And so in April of 2018, I go to this summit. I walk in, I run into a grad school classmate who I've not seen in 10 years. We did a month-long study abroad program in Kenya. And I was like, this is fate. And then another person said, listen, you have to see this doctor at this new clinic in Chicago. He helped me get my daughter after so many years. Like, you need to see her and get another opinion. So she was my 4th doctor, IVF fertility specialist. And as soon as I walked in to the clinic, the way I was greeted from the staff to the nurses to the doctor to the other doctors in the room with the doctor that would be my doctor. What was different at this clinic versus the previous clinics I attended, it was a complete team approach. So my doctor said, listen, I might do one procedure on you, or a retrieval or a transfer, we might remove, some scar tissue or build up, or you might have an ultrasound saline with this doctor. Like, it will never be the same doctor, but we work as a team. And that was different than my last clinic. Each doctor worked on their own. They never really worked together to find like a team approach of like, hey, listen, I work with women in their late 30s or their 40s, or I have a PCOS background or specialty in endometriosis or whatever it was, surrogacy, donor egg. It was so amazing to me because I said, great, if you have weaknesses or skills or strengths, like, work together to figure this out. Like, we're in this as a team. And that's every time I approached the doctor, I said, we're on the same team. My husband's on this team. You're on this team. Your staff, your faculty, your nurses, we're all working together to make this happen. Like, this is a team approach. And we did the first retrieval with her, and we transferred to fresh. She's like, let's try fresh. We haven't done that. Let's try fresh. And she's like, because you're already like have done so many, she's like, let's put 2 in and see if one of them takes, or maybe both take. I was like, great. We did that, and nothing took. Was not pregnant. We had no eggs to show for, nothing frozen, nothing sent off for testing, nothing. And I wasn't really upset about it because I was like, this is my first time with this doctor. I'm not expecting it to be like miracles, but like, for me, it was like this long next journey of like this, we're in this together for the long haul. We did the next retrieval, and I had way more eggs than I ever had with the first 2 at 30 at the previous clinic. And I was like, that's a good sign. And she's like, this is great. Like, this was such a great retrieval. And we transferred 2, 1 took. This was in November, December of 2019. And 1 took. And I went in at like 6 weeks, and she's like, the heartbeat's not where we need to see it. And it's delayed in growth by 3 days. And she's like, we'll check in again at 7 weeks. And she's like, we'll see where it goes. Like she wasn't really, because with IVF, they can tell exactly the growth. And she's like, you can't have like 1 or 2 days is different, but she's like 3. She's like, if we get anything less than that, she's like, it shouldn't, it's not a fresh batch where it can catch up. And so we went in at 7 weeks and it was like now 6 days delayed. And she's like, I think this is probably going to be a miscarriage. She's like, basically the heartbeat was like lowering too. And she's like, this is not a healthy heartbeat. It's measuring 6 days behind. Let's keep track of it. And this was like just days before Christmas. And so she's like, I can't see you Christmas Eve, we're closed. But she's like, I can see you the day after Christmas. And I said, okay. And I said, well, what's the status? And she's like, if we are at 0, then we can do a D&C. So I literally was cramping and miscarrying on Christmas of 2019. Like, I can't believe this. Like, we've done quote unquote everything right. Like, we've gone and seen different specialists. We've gotten different opinions. I've tried everything. At this point, I was like on the heavy metal detox and like eating super healthy. I was going gluten-free, dairy-free, all the things that affect endometriosis patients. And on Christmas, the day after Christmas, I went in for at that point, my 3rd D&C. I was like, I can't believe I have to do this. And after that, I was just ready to do another retrieval. I was like, let's do another retrieval. Let's get enough. Let's start talking about surrogacy. And let's see how many eggs we get this next round. Let's see how many PGS tests. And my doctor's like, yes, let's do another batch, because I just don't think I can keep doing miscarriages. Not doing like it's choice, but like I was like, I don't think I can go through this process again. And so we went in for another, we were starting everything, getting all the meds, calling the insurance, processing through. And this was in March of 2020. And so my period was coming late and I was really frustrated. I was like, let's get started, because you have to wait so many weeks and months after a D&C. I miscarried. I went through a D&C the day after Christmas of 2019. And it wasn't until March where I was like finally cleared, and my levels finally went down where I was like not pregnant anymore. And my period was coming late and all my meds were in. My meds, I was about to like process it through and the world shut down. And they're like, we, you can't come into the clinic. It's like, what? I'm supposed to do another retrieval. I can't do anything else. I can't go into surrogacy. I can't go into donor. I couldn't even go into any of that. So the world shut down. I was like, this seems serious. Like, seems really bad. I don't think the clinic's going to open up. They're like, I think we'll open up in 2 weeks. There's like, none of the world knew. And meanwhile, they're like, if you get this, you cannot come into the clinic. Everything shut down. Everyone was masked. It was just so terrifying to be going through IVF during that process. My husband and I always talked about adoption. So I was like, we can't go through anything else. Maybe, just maybe, the adoption process. Maybe we could start at least the paperwork. And then if the world opens up again, we can then go back to IVF while also going through the adoption process. And little did we know that the world is going to be shut down and clinics are going to be shut down for several weeks to months. And I was like, I can't wait. Like, I'm now 35. I don't know what this is going to look like. Let's start the adoption process. And so we started with an adoption center here in Chicago. And it became, because I couldn't go into work, I was at the time like part-time substitute teaching. I couldn't go into schools. Everything was virtual. I was like, well, why don't I create this and make this my full-time job? And so I did. We went through all the classes. We went through the home study. Everything was approved. And then I think we had started going back to IVF at that point, our clinic. I was like, well, I'll just retrieve and have enough for a surrogate. And hopefully I can like bank enough embryos to be able to PGS test. And hopefully we can start surrogacy while we're going through adoption. We're going through adoption at the same process. And I was like, I'm not stopping the adoption process, because we've miscarried enough times where I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I had one embryo that was PGS tested from our 2019 batch that we had, like that same batch that like one of which I'd miscarried at Christmas. And we had one PGS tested from November 2019. That was frozen. We started going through a retrieval process. And as I'm sure a lot of women went through this, it was like, you went masked in. Sean couldn't go to any appointments with me, my husband. and you did a lot of this alone. And it was just like, you were sitting with other women like 6 feet apart, and everyone, it was just so strict, sanitizers everywhere, like 3 masks. And I was just like, I can't run into anybody because if I get sick, my cycle's canceled and this is thousands of dollars of medication I already have. Like, I can't mess this up. And so we did a retrieval, and we had 4 embryos that were healthy PGS tested, sent off, came back 4 healthy PGS tested. And I was like, just for shits and giggles, let's transfer 1 into me, because now I'll then at least have 4 for surrogacy. And transferred 1 in, and I was pregnant probably like 7 or 8 weeks while we were going through the adoption process. I was like, I'm not saying anything to my adoption counselor because I'll probably miscarry again. This is just like, if it takes, great. If it doesn't, I'm okay with it. I've already done the hard work and gone through therapy, or still going through therapy at that point. And it was like 10 weeks. I was like, oh my God, we're still pregnant. Then it was like 11 weeks, and it was 12 weeks. You're seeing your OB. I'm like, okay, but 12 weeks I miscarried before. I'm not saying any. Adoption counselor was like, listen, your home study's complete. You guys are good. You complete all the coursework. Now it's time to create your book. And you make this large book, and you take photos, and you're creating it for your adoptive mother that could choose you. And she's like, you guys should get started around like 12 weeks. And I was like, Sean, we should wait. We should just see if we can make it to like, 14. And Sean's like, well, we're going to have to tell her, like, if this is really real. I mean, how messed up is that? I'm 12 weeks pregnant, and I can't get excited because I'm like, this could be taken from me again. And at 13 weeks, I was like, this is not real. And, you're really not out of your first trimester until 14 weeks. And I was like, 14 weeks. We'll wait at 14. Sean's like, we can't keep dragging along this adoption. I was like, okay, 14 weeks. If we make it to 14 weeks, then we'll tell her. And we made it to 14 weeks, and we did call her. I was like, we don't know. Can you like still keep us just in case, like at 16, it's just like, we never felt safe enough. And I remember asking other friends who had gone through this IVF process and who had found success, like, when did you feel like it was safe? And I say, quote unquote, safe, like, when did you feel like you could really feel like you were pregnant and like start to like, I don't know, probably 20 weeks. And that just makes me so sad. Like, that's halfway through. It's like when you're actually like, most women, I guess, are able to enjoy it. And so I really just, every week, my mantra was like, while I was pregnant, I am safe, I am healthy, I am pregnant, baby is healthy. And I literally had to repeat that to myself for every day, multiple times a day. I am safe, I am healthy, I am happy, I am pregnant, baby is healthy and safe. Every day for weeks. And that was my mantra, because I was like, I can't control anything else, but I'm really going to kick myself in the butt if I can't enjoy this and be as present as I possibly can. And so it was like, my husband really couldn't get excited. I felt like he couldn't be, not that he couldn't be present, but he was just so worried about it taken away again. He wanted nothing more than to be a father. I wanted nothing more to be a mother. And for me at that point, I think while we were going through the adoption process, I kept saying to him, I don't care how this child comes to me. I don't care if it's via adoption. I don't care if it's, via surrogate. I really was not wanting to do donor egg. I said, if we're going to go the donor route, then it needs to be donor egg and sperm. And my husband's like, well, I'm not comfortable with that. I would rather have it be then surrogate with our embryo, both of our tissue, or adoption. And I said, great. So we're on the same page. We had nothing against other couples who had done it. I was like, either I get to carry or somebody else carries, but I wanted it to be my DNA or not both of our DNA and do adoption. And adoption wasn't a second choice. So it was always part of our plan. I always wanted to adopt one kid and have one of our own. And I think I'd already grieved that, like, I didn't know how the child would come to us, but I was going to be a mom regardless. I just kept saying, I don't care how the baby comes to me. That's not important. I just want to be a mom to a child. And 20 weeks came around, and I think there was like some air bubbles or something in there. And they're like, we're going to do a second test. And I was like, oh my God, it's like not even at 20 weeks we could be safe. And then you're sitting there and you're without your partner because they can't come in because it's COVID. I think that was like another gut punch. It was like, I'm now creating a baby shower that's going to be virtual. I know it's going to be virtual. I've gone to everyone else's baby shower. This is now, at this point, it was 7+ years in the making, you know, trying to get pregnant, having a kid, all these losses. And I was like, and we still can't have my husband come to these appointments. I'm not going to have a baby shower in person. I've been to everyone else's. I was like, all right, this is just another thing. And that now it like looks silly, but there were a lot of things I had to grieve in the process. I was like, this is not how I thought this would look. I didn't think that I would have to FaceTime my husband from our clinic. My doctor was fabulous, and he let me come in for multiple like ultrasounds, and he's like, we will FaceTime Sean. Like, I was like, he's like, what will help you with your anxiety? I said, FaceTiming Sean, he needs to see this. Like, he deserves this. We deserve this. And so, you know, we did a lot of FaceTime. My doctor was, I mean, like a kiss from God, like just the most incredible doctor. He never judged me for needing more ultrasounds. Like, I just need to see the baby. And she was helping. We found out the gender, and you know, it was just constantly this fear of like, you cannot catch COVID. You cannot catch COVID. Just so you know, if you catch COVID, you will be delivering alone. That was like another like traumatic. I was like, I can't deliver a child alone. And, you know, some friends are on the medical field. They're like, well, you weren't delivering alone. I was like, without my husband is alone. With strangers who are not my friends, not my family, that is still delivering alone. And about a month or two before she was born, I had I just had a lot of fluid, and it was a lot more fluid than, you know, 1 in 2 women have this, and I can't remember what it's called. It's completely natural, normal. But I had a lot of fluid, and the doctor said, like, listen, she is measuring very large, like 9.5-pound baby. I was like, what? Like, my husband and I were like under 8 pounds, or maybe 8 pounds. I was like, what? I was like, we're that big, like tall, like people. Like, why am I carrying a 9.5-pound baby? And the doctor also said, like, you know, she's measuring large, but also like you have a lot of fluid. And so, like, God forbid any sort of infection, like that's a lot of fluid. We don't know how safe we can keep the baby. Like, nothing's guaranteed, but like, I just want you to know this is a risk. Like, if there's any sort of infection that comes in, like that's a lot of fluid. It could get to her very quickly. And I said, nope, not worth it. Let's do the C-section. And he's like, then we can get her out. It's already planned. And so at 39 weeks, I was scheduled for a C-section. And she came out and she was 7.5 pounds. And so it's funny because they ask you, at least at my hospital, they were like, okay, what music do you want, you know, playing in the background? I was like, I want reggae. We want reggae. So he's like, reggae? Like Bob Marley? I said, yes, Bob Marley. We love reggae. I want her coming into this world with reggae. And so she had Bob Marley playing in the background. And my best friend, who had had a C-section a 1.5 years prior to me, she goes, listen, I'm going to let you know the baby's not going to cry right away. So you need to be prepared as a C-section. Thank God she said that, because she didn't cry right away. They have to, like, you know, clear out her passageways. And then she started crying. So she's like, just give it a pause, and then you will hear her cry and you will know she's good. And it was like a second. I was like, thank God she told me, because I was prepared for that. And then I said, is she good? Is she all healthy? They said, she looks great. And my second question was, and everyone was silent, I said, how much does she weigh? And there was a pause, and there was like laughing. They go, 7.5 pounds. I said, wow, you guys were really smart. It was just, I had a lot of fluid, so I looked bigger. And so it was jokingly, all my nurses were like, here's Catherine. You know, my full name is Catherine. Kasia's Polish for Katie. They're like, here's Catherine carrying the toddler. And I was like, and meanwhile, she was 21 inches, 7.5 pounds. And I was like, she was not 9.5 or 10. And the doctor's like, we will say we're wrong a lot of times. It's just an estimate. And so anytime people are like, well, our baby's measuring, remember, it's just an estimate. Doctors can be wrong. And I will say, my biggest lesson, having so much loss, first of all, there's not a day that goes by, and I'm sure a lot of women who have had loss or have gone through infertility and any sort of medicated cycles will say, I wake up every day and I cannot wait to get out of bed to go hug her and hold her. And her name is Samantha Jo. Her middle name is after my dad, who like suddenly passed away. I was like, Every day I say, thank you for choosing me to be your mom. I can't believe you're here. I can't believe you're here. It's so silly because she's 26 and a half months, and there's not every night we say things we're grateful for from the day. And I say to myself, I can't believe she's here. A lot of friends say, like, what's been your favorite decade? I'm turning 39 in August. And I said, it's like so complicated. My 20s were it was such a great decade. I met my husband. We traveled a lot. We got married in that decade. And my 30s is a lot of it is tainted because I spent so much my 30s, literally almost my entire 30s. I mean, I had her when she was, when I was 36, with trying to get pregnant, loss of my father at the age of 30, and then like entering in that decade of so much loss, so much trying. But in that decade, not only, of course, did I have my daughter, and I know I'm one of the lucky ones. I know a lot of women go through this process and they don't come out with a baby. They don't, even after their losses. But I've met so many women in this community. I've changed my career to reflect helping women in this, just like you, Sarah. My husband's like, do you think like you'd want to help women going through this? And I was like, no, I'm not infertile. I was like, so many years, I was like, that word infertile was like such a negative stigma and connotation. And then I became 1 in 4. I miscarried. So I was like, now I'm like part of the miscarriage club, quote unquote. And then it was like infertility. And first it was 1 in 8 women. Now it's 1 in 6, which just blows my mind. And I'm also 1 in 10 because I'm an endometriosis warrior. And I'm like, there's so many things tied to my 30s and this like journey. And at the same time, I'm like, gosh, like I am just like you in the sense of I think our stories and our voices matter. Our journeys matter. There's so much hope. There's so many wisdom, like nuggets of wisdom that we can pass on. There's so much goodness and joy and love in sharing our journeys and sharing our stories. If it's just one other woman or couple goes through and it's like, oh, I see myself in Kasia's journey or in Sarah's journey, like then sharing my story is worth it. And I look at it and I'm like, wow, like my daughter Samantha, like we were interviewed by the BBC because our story was just ridiculous in the sense of like, ups and downs. It's like, is there going to be a silver lining at the end? And like, it was a miracle and we have our miracle. But every day I'm like, there's so much that she's helping heal in me. She's helping reparent me in so many ways because of going through this journey that as much as I want to say, yes, there were a lot of dark days, and there were a lot, and not even dark days, there were weeks and months of darkness where I was like, I just don't think I can get out of this. And it was hearing other women's stories and having other women's where there was support groups I joined, meeting up with other women, whether it was coaching other women going through these that truly helped me see the light in very dark days where I was like, I have nothing to give. And it was actually, I have a lot more to give. And I'm just so grateful for this space of finding other women who have gone through this journey who really, truly get it and can hold my hand and I always say this with my clients, but I also say this with other women going through is like, not everyone, as Brene Brown, deserves to hear a story. So choose wisely who your sacred group is going to be and who can truly hold that sacred space for you when you're in the midst of a cycle, in the midst of a loss, or in the midst of, I say this all the time, I'm going to tell you a story. This is what I'm going through. And I need you to be, and you tell the person, I need you to just be silent. And at the very end say, yeah, girl, be the cheerleader, whatever it is you need. Or I'm going to tell you a story and I'm really pissed off. I'm angry. I'm resentful. And I need you to be like, man, that stinks. That totally, whatever it is you need is being able to articulate it to others and choosing wisely who those people in your life are going to be that you're going to share your story with. Not everyone deserves to hear it, or they might not be in the right space to hear it or support you or to give you the love that you so deserve. And so find your, your tribe, your club, your people, your friends, your support. They don't have to be family, or they don't have to be your actual friends you grew up with. And they might be completely random strangers who have gone on this journey, who might be the most amazing support for you during your time. And it's okay to seek help. It's okay to see a therapist. It's great to have a coach, a fertility and mindset coach while you're going through it. It's okay and great for you to find support groups, whether it's virtually or in person, and find things that help you find joy while you're going through it, because there is still a lot of joy that you can find going through hope and loss and infertility and miscarriage. There can be silver linings and good things that you can find even in the midst of all of that.
I really love that, telling people exactly what you need from them, like when you're telling them a story, because I think we go into, telling people things and then we don't like the reaction we get. But sometimes I think they don't know what it is that we're wanting, but we're mad that they don't know that,
Mm-hmm.
kind of that
Yes.
cycle.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we have so many lessons of that, and just whether or not you go through fertility or loss or miscarriage or infertility, or you found success, it's like that is not how I thought that conversation would go. And then you're resentful of the person. It's like, but you didn't articulate. So they, with their, I always say, like, every human is doing the very best that they can, given the resources, talents, or skills in that moment in time. 5 years ago, I didn't have the talents, resources, and skills that I do now. So I know to do better. So it's like, you can't expect people to be at different stages, because we're all learning at different times or have life experiences that happen to us. And so we know better. And so I remember having a conversation, and I really was like, I don't know if I'm meant to be a mom. Like, this is maybe not in the cards for me. And I remember thinking, like, and that's okay. Like, I might have to do the surrogacy route. Like, I might not be able to carry. My friend's like, that's ridiculous. You're young, da da da. And it was just like super invalidating. And so the next day I came to her and I said, I really felt ick about that conversation we had yesterday. You made me feel XYZ. And I said, it's not your fault. I actually should have articulated to you, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to be frustrated and mad with me, because this is right now the response I need to have. That's going to help me. And she's like, you're right. And I said, I didn't need your advice. I didn't need your opinion. I needed this, but I didn't articulate it. So it's really not your fault. So now moving forward, I will tell you if I know what I need. And that was like a huge lesson. I was like, I can't be mad at her. She didn't know what I needed because I didn't articulate it to her. And so I think that's just helpful in marriages, in friendships, in sister-mother relationships, in parent relationships, just overall, like, you articulate what I need before you start that conversation.
And the other thing that I think is really important that you touched on is the advocating for yourself. It frustrates me so much how many doctors did not listen to you when you kept saying there is something wrong. And, especially the doctor who said, oh, that doesn't affect fertility.
Like, so scary. That's so scary.
It does.
I'm like, I want to say, like, I'm not unique. I'm your average woman, especially endometriosis. I mean, 1 in 10, that's so high. So someone, it's either a sister, an aunt, a cousin, a colleague, a boss, an employee, a random stranger, a neighbor, and to just say, like, no, we women just deal with it. Like, I'm not unique in that. Like, there are doctors saying this who are not specialists, of course, in endometriosis. That's really dangerous. Because if I would heard that from one doctor, I could have given up. I'm like, you're right. I don't know anything. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. But I heard that over and over again through 7 doctors. I was saying the same thing. I was not saying anything different. Are you sure? Nope. We women, we deal with pain. It doesn't affect fertility. And I'm like, it actually really does affect fertility. And so when you're saying that, I wonder, like, how many women went right into surrogacy, or they went right into donor egg, or they went right into adoption and couldn't have their own children, or they couldn't carry, or they decided not to carry because they were told no. Like, that like blows my mind. So advocating is, and I will say, one of the pieces that nobody told me going through this almost 10-year journey is advocating for yourself does not stop at trying to have kids. It doesn't stop when you are actually giving birth to a child. It does not stop when they are born and you ask a doctor, hey, listen, she looks constipated. What do you think? And they're like, I'm like, are you sure it's not constipation? It's like, you're constantly advocating. I have a dog. It's like, I'm constantly advocating for my dog. Are you sure? Have you checked this, this, and this? and I'm not saying always Google, but like get second or third opinions. What are the other vets or doctors in your practice? How would they approach the situation? And even so, like my husband and your partner seeing you go through this, he advocates for himself, like, should I get screened for cancer earlier? What do you think? Oh no, we don't do that until da da da, or we don't screen for, what is it for guys? Not appendix. What is it for guys for? Oh my gosh, it's like the penis cancer. I'm like blanking on it. Is it colon?
Um, are you talking
It's
about
like
like the
one of the
prostate?
cancers that but they don't check till later. Yes, thank you. It's like they don't screen that first. She's like, "Are you sure? Could I get this screened earlier? This kind of run if it does or does not." And it's like advocating. Like I even noticed he's like, "I'm advocating for myself because of what I've seen us go through." So it's just advocacy is just always a good thing. And we were after my daughter was born, she was 5.5 weeks, and my father-in-law he had a stroke and went into finding out that he has glioblastoma. And so we were advocating for him. I'm like researching about cancer doctors, like it doesn't stop just because of infertility. And so it's like a lifelong lesson. It's a really hard one, but it's like advocating for yourself in every facet of your life shows up over and over again.
Yeah, that's something I think a lot of us are not good at until we learn to do it. It's not something we do naturally.
Yeah, it's like a muscle you have to like constantly train to say like this doesn't, and listen to your intuition. I think that's the one thing. And not think, I know we as women have incredible intuition, and it's like dismissed a lot of times. So like really hone in that intuition. If you think something is not right, ask about it. Don't be afraid. Or you notice something, something doesn't feel right. Like really speak up. I think goes a long way.
So if people wanted to connect with you, where would they go to connect?
Yeah, so they can go to my website at coaching with Kasia, Kas as in Sam, IA.com, or you can also find me at Kasia S. McGuire on Instagram. I'm very vocal and just on there and just very active. And whether it's like in between interviews, if I have any, like I'll post them there and resources. I also have a fertility mindset guidebook that like has literally a checklist if you go into doctors, what you can ask, how to have conversations with friends and family while going through loss and fertility, and just other fun things that you can do while going through fertility to still find joy in the midst of going through fertility. So I hope that's helpful, and feel free to ask any questions or, message me. I'm always loving helping people, but also just listening. So if you just want someone to listen to your journey, I love hearing from women around the world and couples.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story with us.
Of course, thank you so much for having me on. Your work is so important, Sarah, and I'm so grateful to you and to all the women who share their stories and continue sharing their stories.
Thank you so much, Kasia, for sharing your story with us. Your journey was such a long and difficult one. And one of the most frustrating things I heard was that you went to so many different doctors who are all dismissive of your concerns. How many times have women complained about something hurting or not feeling right and just been told it's just something we deal with as women? Why is it that women's health is so often dismissed? Like we're just making a big deal out of nothing, or that others before us dealt with this pain or issue, so now we have to deal with it too, or that you're just being dramatic somehow. It's all just ridiculous. It really is time that providers start taking women's health seriously. I think we absolutely know our own body better than anyone else. We know when something feels off or wrong, and it shouldn't take going to as many doctors as Kasia did before getting an answer. Think of all the time that could have been potentially saved if one of the first doctors had just listened to her. I know it's a recurring theme on this podcast, but again, advocating for yourself is just so, so important. We all need to learn to be better advocates, myself included, and doctors need to learn to be better listeners and take their patients' concerns more seriously. The healthcare system needs to do better for women everywhere. If you received less than optimal care during your infertility or loss journey, what is something you wish the doctors had done? You can email me at Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at journeyforjasmine.com, or you can send me a message on Instagram or Facebook with things that you wish the doctors had done. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Please leave a review or a rating if you like the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.